hammering the world and then wild. I'm a little worried that
Yo guys, what is up? Max in our first Descendant video, and today we're going to be going over my guide to Serena. Now, this is possibly going to be a pretty long one because Serena is one of the most complex and in-depth Descendants that they've released. She has so many different synergies and ways to build, and in this video I want to break down not only some of her best mods and ways to play her, but also why she's working so well and why she's doing the things that she's able to do. I hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. It might be a bit of a longer one, but hope you enjoy. Let's get right into it. So because Serena is a new Descendant, we're going to talk about her skills first, and then we'll get into her Transcendent modules, and then the builds, weapons, reactors, everything else that you need to know. So to start, her first ability is called Sacred Flame. This fires a projectile down. It does all right skill damage, it does do splash damage, and it travels really far. The interesting thing about Sacred Flame is that it does damage if you're hitting enemies with it for the first time. It procs something called Repentance, which does a pretty small dot, but the big thing is that it procs fire resistance decrease on enemies. So if you're using fire guns, you're going to deal more damage with them. And also it gives you something called Round Recovery, which allows you to get ammo back. So if you're struggling on ammo, you can cast the one and then shoot at enemies that are burning, and you'll be able to get some ammo back. If you fire this at teammates, you apply Blessing to them, which is going to give them healing. So you can kind of play as a healing character as well if you want to. Next up, we get to talk about her second ability, which is very unique and has tons of different synergies with different weapons. So to start, when you activate this, you get a 85% gravity decrease. So if you jump, you fly way higher, and this allows you to basically kind of hover. You're kind of always falling and balancing your momentum between going up and going down. And you also get a 100% increased grappling hook charge time. So your grappling hook comes up slower, so you kind of need to use your dashes and stuff to stay airborne. But while you're airborne, you get a bunch of different buffs. The first is for your general rounds that gives you a 50% multi-hit chance increase and a 50% multi-hit damage increase. Now, multi-hit is a new thing that was introduced into the game that is incredibly powerful, but it works differently on different weapons. So every single weapon in the game has a multi-hit kind of multiplier coefficient. So if you multi-hit on the Last Dagger, you only get 6% of your damage. Obviously, you are increasing your multi-hit damage on Serena, but at base, the Last Dagger only does 6% damage when you multi-hit. However, on something like the Fallen Hope, for example, its multi-hit damage is 1x. So this does double damage whenever you multi-hit. So that buff is going to be different on different weapons. The Last Dagger doesn't really care about multi-hit as much, but the Fallen Hope will be dealing double damage. Last Dagger still does ridiculous damage on her. We'll talk about that in a bit. But some of the other things that are going on with her is with impact rounds, you get increased range, and also you get to recover your MP on crits. So if you're bringing a crit hand cannon, such as the Perforator or something like that, or a Scout, you can get your MP back if you ever need some while you're in the air. And then her special rounds, which is my favorite buff on her, gives her 150% AoE damage for free on your weapons, and it hits in a 20-meter radius and can hit up to 20 targets. So you basically just shoot your Greg's or whatever special rounds weapon, and it'll hit everything around it. And on top of the fourth ability, which we'll talk about in a second, also allows you to hit everything around you. So that's really cool. And then lastly, we get to the high power rounds additional effects. Now this reads that you get additional fire damage on hitting enemies with Repentance, which is your skill power times 393 with a 50% chance to proc. Now I didn't fully understand this when I first messed around with it. I didn't really realize that they had to be debuffed by Repentance, which is the one ability. And after testing it, I don't think this is working. I've had other people that are close to me test this as well, and I just don't think this is working. It's really hard to test with something like the Restored Relic, but with testing with a sniper rifle, jumping in the air, debuffing enemies, with skill power increases on, without skill power increases on, I don't think this is proccing. And when you're regardless of if it's getting buffed by skill power or not, if you do it on the ground versus you do it in the air, I also wasn't seeing a difference. So I wasn't seeing this getting buffed by skill power, and I also wasn't seeing this being procced if you're in the air or not. Very hard to test on things like the Restored Relic, but I didn't see any changes on using sniper rifles. Only got to test this for a short amount of time. So, like, there could be some more nuances here. Maybe I encountered a bug. But just note that I'm not really going to be really building around this because I can't personally get it to actually work. So maybe something the devs need to hotfix. Could be really cool in the future. Her third ability is called Soar. This is a dash. It's what allows you to stay airborne. On Serena, she's basically always descending, but she has like less gravity. So the Soar can move you in a direction. Little pro tip, if you are playing her and you hit no directional input, the Soar will actually bring you straight up. So if you are playing and like want to go up, you don't have to constantly be moving your camera up to do so. You can just hit up with no directional input and you will go higher. And then with Soar, it does some damage. I personally don't like using it as a damage ability. The main cool thing that this does is it procs reload on your weapons. So if you're using a rocket launcher, a sniper, or anything, if you dash, it'll reload. And this also procs reload effects, even if your weapon is full magazine. So like, for example, on our Last Dagger, if we have Firing Fiesta on, if we dash, even with the weapon being full mag, it'll still proc Firing Fiesta because it's still counting as a reload. Her fourth ability is called Redemption, and this is arguably the strongest ability that she has. Basically, if you activate this on the ground, you get Prayers of Redemption, which gives you damage reduction, and whenever you get hit, you're going to lose stacks of DR, but you get HP and MP recovery back. And if you activate this in the air, you get Redemption's Judgment. This gives you 100% chance to fire AoE damage on all of your firearm attacks, and those firearms deal their damage times your damage multiplier, which your damage multiplier is your max HP times 0.8%. This skill scales incredibly well with HP. To give you an idea, your second HP mod that you put on her gives about, from my testing in the scenario that I had, about 75% more damage with the fourth ability. And the fourth ability scales not only with your HP, but also with the gun that you're using. So for example, if you're using a like sniper rifle and shooting with the fourth, you're going to be hitting enemies in an area for millions of damage. But if you're using like a thunder cage, you're shooting really quickly, you're going to be hitting enemies for like 40k, but you're getting that proc more often. And so there are certain weapons that really synergize with this. Weapons that hit very hard and hit very quickly will take the best advantage of this redemption skill, and it is incredibly powerful, and it's going to be part of the reason why we're going to want to stack so much HP on her. And lastly, her passive, Divinity. While you're in the air, you're going to get increased AoE, increased accuracy, reduced recoil, and you take less damage. Now let's talk Transcendent modules. She has two. The first is Him. When the devs first showed this off, I thought it looked completely useless, but I think it's a must-have mod for Serena. It reads that when you use it on the ground, it creates a zone that increases the jump of allies. Why would you care about that? Allies have grappling hooks. They don't need to jump higher. And then it says when used in midair, it increases the movement speed of nearby allies and increases maximum movement distance. The movement speed is what we care about. Now, when we go to the card of this, you can see that it does like some AoE. And if we use it on the ground, we get a jump pad. We use it in the air. We get 40% movement speed. That is for us and for our teammates, which is awesome. But you might be like, well, why do I care about buffing the movement speed of teammates? A few reasons. One, because it allows her to use Passionate Sponsor. It considers, this considers a buff to your teammates. And so you can get 75% more gun damage on her, which is bonkers, but it also gives you 75% more modifier, and she has things that scale not only off of gun damage, but also off of modifier. And so if you're ever playing in a team, Passionate Sponsor is broken on her. It gives her so much extra damage. I absolutely love this mod, and you can use it with Him, and Him is going to be on a thing that is on a 3.7 second cooldown. So you can spam this, right? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but Moxie, it removes the free reload. Why would I use this? I want to reload. I have 9 bullets in this. Tap that, 20. 9 bullets, 20. It doesn't say anything about reloading, but it does keep the reload. So you have absolutely zero downsides of using this Transcendent module, and it gives her one of the most powerful buffs in the game if you're playing with teammates. Now, if you're not playing with teammates, we have a solo build for you, which we'll be showcasing in a second. But Passionate Sponsor with him is freaking nuts, and you should most likely be using it. Her other Transcendent module is also pretty sick. It's called Divine Surge. It allows you to transform your fourth ability into a AoE nuke that actually does pretty freaking good damage. You can get it on a ridiculously low cooldown. Ours, we have 3 stacks of it on a 4.6 second cooldown, and it allows you to constantly dive bomb enemies, creating Purifying Blaze, which will deal burning fire damage. If you do it on enemies that have already been burning, you inflict Repentance on them, which is going to reduce their fire resistance and allow you to get ammo back. But it looks a bit like this. So you get to like dive bomb on enemies, and it does like a bunch of damage. It's a bit awkward looking in my opinion, but you can proc like Holy Fire on enemies, and like I only have one AoE mod on this. I have to like adjust for our like full like ability build, but it allows you to cover a lot of area, and the burning damage persists on the ground for a while, and the dot's pretty solid. So if you want to play her as an AoE mobber, you can do so with the Divine Surge mod. The very last thing that I want to show you before we like get into her builds is just really stress how good her fourth ability is. This, while it's active, gives you a ton of extra AoE damage on your guns. Currently, we are at a 33-second cooldown with 13 seconds of duration. So you might be like, wow, that doesn't sound like it's going to be up all the time. Watch this. So we activated it in the air. We are glowing. Anytime that we are glowing, we have the buff up. We are still glowing, still glowing. We now got our fourth back, and then the buff expires. So you are able to have a 100% uptime. I clicked it on the ground there, so I activated the wrong one. But you can have 100% uptime on her fourth ability. And to do that, you need multi-talented, or a great way to do that is multi-talented. Multi-talented saves you 2 mod slots. But when this procs off of dimension abilities, which the redemption is dimension, and we have dimension on our dash, so we can basically always have our multi-talented buff up. But when this procs, we're able to allow the fourth to have 100% uptime. I cannot stress how powerful that is, because you know you can overlap all of your things and just have tons of damage. Or if you need survivability and MP and HP back, you can also do that as well. Having the 4 on a 100% uptime is really gross for her, and so multi-talented is a fantastic mod. All right, now let's go over the build. Normally I do mods one by one, but this video is already going to go on for like so long that I just don't think we have time. So we're just going to talk about each one. So to start, this is the co-op build. This is going to be using him and Passionate Sponsor, which we already discussed the synergies of. On this build, and on a lot of her builds, we're going to be rocking double HP. So I've got increased HP and HP amplification. HP gives a ton of extra damage. You might be wondering, how much extra damage for the extra HP mod? It is a 75% damage increase on her AoE damage by adding the second HP module. So this is very worth. It's one of the most worth mods that we could put on her. We're also going to be using double cooldown, Nimble Fingers, and MP conversion. Once again, we really want the fourth to be up almost always. We do need skill expansion. You have to put range on her. If you're going to be using the special rounds, the AoE is massive from that, and the AoE on this is also massive. Note that the max expandable range is 200%. So we're only like 8% off by using skill expansion. So we're pretty much covered there. And then for the rest of the mods, you need energy on her. I think the best option is MP Collector. However, MP Collector is slightly bugged right now. It doesn't work as well as it should. The devs have acknowledged that. And so this will be her best mod, in my opinion. but until MP Collector is functioning properly, I was just rocking Energy Collection, which gives us more MP recovery. This means you still have to go touch the ground to get MP, but Energy Collection does increase the amount of MP that you get passively from all of your MP things. So, like, if you have, like, MP recovery in combat, you get more of that. If you're using MP from, like, shooting an impact round, you get more MP from that. And so Energy Collection does work out pretty well, but you actually have to, like, go out and use it, versus MP Collector is just something that kind of, like, more passively happens a bit. And then lastly, because this is a non-multi-talented setup, we do need a bit more cooldown. And so I put Focus on Fire. You would ideally have this max rank. I got so many builds, I didn't get to, like, fully catalyze everything. So Focus on Fire would ideally be max rank here, but it's going to give us some extra cooldown, which is really great. And then I went with Shot Focus. Shot Focus is kind of a feel mod on this. That's going to allow us to get a just absurd amount of gun damage on her, which I think is really nice. But for example, like, if you're feeling like you need more mana sustain or something like that, you can just swap Shot Focus for, like, Strong Mentality if you wanted. There's a bunch of different mods. This is, like, probably the most optional one here, but I think it's pretty nice, the amount of gun damage that we're going to be able to get with Passionate Sponsor plus Shot Focus plus all of her gun buffs is just disgusting. So that is her co-op build. And when I say co-op, it's just like, if you're playing public matchmaking, this is just pretty dumb to rock. You're going to be buffing your teammates, and you're going to be giving yourself a ton of extra damage. Don't think of it as like playing a support, because while you are giving a support stuff to your teams, you're giving yourself way more damage. And so really cool build. Next, it just makes sense to transition into the solo build. On the solo build, the big thing that we're going to be losing is obviously Passionate Sponsor, which opens up a mod slot for Arcade Tech. So we're going to be putting Multi-Talented. Because we've got Multi-Talented, we no longer need Focus on Fire. And so we can slot exactly what I said we would have had, which is Strong Mentality here. So then we've got Strong Mentality, Energy Collection, HP, Shot Focus, Maximize Conservation, Nimble Fingers, Multi-Talented, Skill Expansion, HP, and MP. This is 100% uptime on our fourth ability. You've got a ton of like conservation from Strong Mentality cost, plus Maximize Conservation cost. You'll be able to sustain very well with that Energy Collection. And this is going to be like super, super cozy solo play. You're really tanky. You've got everything that you need to deal an F ton of damage to enemies. And I like this build a lot. Her next build is her Phoenix build. This is going to be using Divine Surge. Basically, kind of plays like Valby's Dive Bomb, where you're just going to be dive bombing AoE enemies and stacking up your damage circles. We can have this set up so we basically have 100% cooldown on this and just can keep spamming it and keep up our MP and everything, which is really, really nice. And the reason I didn't focus on her ability build is because I personally think her gun builds are just more interesting. There's already a lot of Descendants that can kind of do her AoE damage and do more of it more efficiently, such as Inez. So I didn't think it was like super important to focus on. But for this, basically, we'd be rocking double range mods so we could get the max amount on Divine Surge. I put Focus on Fire. You'd want Focus on Fire and Focus on Singularity for a ton of extra cooldown. Throw in Nimble Fingers and MP Conversion for even more cooldown. Decimator for some extra dot damage, because we're going to be wanting this Purifying Blaze to deal a fair bit of damage for us. Throw on HP. The Strong Mentality, I just had like an extra slot here. I do think, like, because of her crit rates not being all that great, you would go for the amplification modules. Could also technically throw duration on there, but throwing like singular amplification for even more dot damage and throwing on fire amplification for even more fire damage is probably what I would go for with these last two mods. Depends on if you need the mana sustain or not. If you do need the mana sustain, you could throw in like one of these and then like an MP collector, for example. But basically on her Phoenix build, we're going to go a lot of cooldown and just make sure that we can spam her like dive bomb on enemies and do all those dots. It does hit for pretty significant damage, and you know, the dots aren't bad. For this, you're definitely going to want to look for a fire singular reactor, and we'll talk more about reactors later. And our last build to talk about is her bossing build. Now, this is currently set up for solo. the big thing to adjust is if you need to do this in like co-op or in a boss that doesn't take more than half a second. You might need some cooldown to be able to reproc your fourth ability. Your fourth is up for 13 seconds, and currently this build is set up so that anything that is you're going to be fighting against will be dead in way shorter than 13 seconds. So like we didn't really need cooldown for her bossing build. But basically the idea here is we're going to be stacking HP. Her fourth ability, Redemption Judgment, is able to hit the same enemy. So even though it does AoE damage, you can hit the enemy that you're shooting at with this, and you can do it multiple times. And so one of the best weapons to do this with is weapons that deal 1, a ton of damage, and 2, fire very quickly. And there is one weapon in particular that has been ruling the meta of TFD for the past few weeks to months, and that is the Last Dagger. Mine is not like crazy setup. I can't get another fire rate roll for the life of me. But basically the whole setup with this is we're going to be stacking as much HP as we possibly can get. And so when we're shooting, we're going to be getting the most amount of damage from Redemption's Judgment. The only way to increase your damage from Redemption's Judgment is by increasing your HP. And I found 1 HP mod to be a 75% damage increase. I haven't tested with this much HP on, but basically I've got 35,000 HP currently. And the damage jump with 35,000 damage or 35,000 HP is massive. And then we put on things to increase our damage even further, such as accelerated drive shaft. Fire rate is absolutely king for DPS. So whenever we roll, we get 25% fire rate at a 15% chance. So basically, you just roll until this procs, and then you just delete the boss. And then we've also got shot focus for some more firearm damage. And we're going to go for the strat using Overwhelming HP, which fixes our max shield at 1 and increases our max HP by 19.8 of our max shield. We're then going to want to go for Weighing the Scales, which gives us max shield, and also Amplification Control, which gives us max shield, and then also Increased Shield, which also gives us max shield. I'm going to be rocking full HP components, but on my bottom set, I do have a gold roll of max shield. That's going to be putting us at, like, you know, a fair bit of max shield, even though you only see 1. That's going to give us a bit of extra HP, which once again is really the only way to scale her fourth ability. So it's really the only way to build around her bossing is just giving her as much HP as possible. And then you want to damn it a weapon that hits hard and that hits fast. And the Last Dagger really fits the bill. You could kind of use whatever you want, but that weapon is just a absolutely madhouse of damage, and so that's what we're rocking right now. For our inversion buffs, you're going to want to pick the rounds buff that is beneficial to the boss that you're fighting. So, you know, if you're fighting like Frostwalker, pick fire. For Tormentor, we pick toxic. And then we also grab the strike point amplification for more weak point. And then the aerial maneuvering raider gives you 100% multi-hit chance. Even on the Last Dagger, the multi-hit damage is not good, but I do believe that your multi-hits can proc your fourth ability multiple times. And so getting this is just a massive damage increase, and something that like Serena alone really, really benefits from. So getting this for your boss killing will make a large difference. For her weapons, there's just so many that are interesting and cool. You could kind of use whatever you want. If you have a favorite weapon, you could kind of slap it on her and be good with it. The weapon I'm most excited to mess around with for her is the Ancient Knight. I don't have this built yet. I just need a little bit. I need 3 more Void Charge Stones, but I'm going to want to get it 4 out of 4, so I'll probably have a video out on that. But all of the new weapons seem like they could be really interesting on her, and anything that fires quickly is going to be interesting. The lasers on her are going to be pretty interesting because they get the extra AoE damage. So many cool options. My personal favorites right now are the Greg's Reverse Fate. I don't have a core on this, and I'll show you my build, but like just note that my build is like I'm just starting to like optimize for her. And so like I think, for example, having weak point on a Greg's Reverse Fate doesn't make a ton of sense because I can't really aim that well when I'm flying. And so I definitely need to adjust these builds. I do think she's going to be pretty interesting with like putting some multi-hit on for weak point, just because it's tough to hit enemies' weak points while you're flying. This is my Last Dagger, and how I've set this up just basically going for as much damage as possible. And because we're not using her on Glay, we have to put on Firing Fiesta. This thing fires so fast that it will just delete your ammo unless you're using Firing Fiesta. So really only usable on her with this. That's specifically for bossing. Don't really need it for mobbing. It's fine to just reload. But this is how our Last Dagger is looking, with the cores being for Toxic, Firearm, Fire Rate, and Mag. And then I've got Firearm Attack versus Colossus, Crit Rate, Crit Damage, and Firearm Attack on this. And then lastly, I've got my Restored Relic. Once again, this thing is like very, very far from being set up. Been working on it. Not full mods, but we got some radius, we got some crit, and we got some damage on it. Once again, some things I need to work on. But these are the 3 weapons I would really highlight on her, because all of them have different uses and different synergies. I know that the heavy damage off of skills is not currently working on her with a Restored Relic, but that doesn't mean that the Restored Relic still isn't one of the strongest AoE weapons in the entire game, and it's even stronger on her when you're firing from the air and getting a ton of ammo. For her Reactor, I'd strongly recommend finding a skill cooldown Reactor with cost reduction, I think would be the god roll. Skill cooldown and cost. You don't need a good Reactor with her because her damage does not scale off of skill power unless you're using the Phoenix build. On the Phoenix build, I think you'd want something that looks like this: skill cooldown and singular. But note that you could use a non-attribute Reactor that's got cooldown and skill cost, and you would be more than fine for 99% of the scenarios that you're going to be playing her in. And then we get to external components. For her components for bossing, I'm sure there's a good set that you could whip up, but HP is so freaking impactful that I just went and found all of the highest HP things that I could find. So this Invader set has max HP with gold max HP. This Polar Knight had high max HP. Not all max HP is made equal. So for example, even though this says max HP and it's 646, this is max HP and it's 484. So you want to get all of the ones that are your 646 max HPs. That makes a big difference, which is why I kind of forgoed a set bonus and just grabbed as much health as I could for bossing. And then for everything else, in my opinion, you want to use the Ascending set. This set is massive because of the thing that it gives you. That is, when reloading in midair, you get supply bullets. The biggest issue you'll find on Serena, at least in my case, was that I was constantly running out of ammo. Some weapons are worse than others, but ammo is a genuinely massive big issue, and just getting 10% of your ammo back every time that you dash, because your dash counts as a reload, is fantastic. The Doggo, the new fellow, will give you ammo. This is the new golden, but mine's only currently level 5, and I have to wait 92 seconds for him to give me rounds. At level 30, this gives you 40 seconds to get your rounds back, so that will be way more reliable. But at at an early level, it really is hardly noticeable. And so you're really going to want to be using this Ascending set. The other set to use if you're not having ammo issues is the Hunter set. This gives you skill cooldown, but also MP recovery in and out of combat, which is really nice. And so if you're having trouble sustaining mana on her, I'd go the Hunter set. If you're having trouble sustaining ammo on her, I'd go the Ascending set. I was having more issues with ammo, so I personally opted for the Ascending set. And the one thing that's freaking amazing about the Ascending set, I'm so happy they did this, is it's all max HP rolls. While it's not the highest max HP rolls, it's all max HP, which means you're getting a ton out of your fourth ability when you're mobbing on her. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I know this was a longer one, and I hope it wasn't confusing because I had to do a bunch of retakes during this, basically because I made a whole build for her second ability using rocket launchers, only to figure out while I was showing off the big difference that skill damage made, that it wasn't working at all. And so, a little bit confusing on my end, but hopefully the video was informative. Hopefully it was enjoyable, and I hope you enjoy playing Serena. She's a really cool Descendant, and I think she's actually in a pretty good spot balance-wise. I think the Last Dagger currently is not balanced, but her in general, I do think she's actually in a pretty good spot. And so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.